The ancient temple stretched before Dr. Jinho like a cathedral made of living crystal. His boots crunched softly against the dust that had settled over 50 million years, each step echoing through chambers that had once housed the galaxy's most powerful civilization. The Primarchs had built this place as a monument to their greatness, but now it served as their tomb. Jinho adjusted his breathing apparatus and checked his suit's power levels. The dead world of Keth-Moran offered no atmosphere, no warmth, no life, just the skeletal remains of cities that had once gleamed brighter than stars. His ship, the Deep Current, waited in orbit above, its AI companion Nexus monitoring his vital signs through the quantum link embedded in his helmet. Structural integrity holding at 96%, Nexus reported in its melodic voice. Temperature inside the temple is a steady minus 40 degrees. Radiation levels normal for a dead world. Jinho nodded, his four eyes scanning the intricate carvings that covered every surface. The Primarchs had been artists as much as conquerors, and their work still took his breath away after decades of archaeological study. Scenes of cosmic battles played out in crystalline relief, wars between species that had turned entire star systems to ash, the birth and death of civilizations, the slow dance of evolution across millions of worlds. But something felt different about this temple. His scanner had detected energy readings from deep within its core, which should have been impossible. The Primarchs had vanished without explanation, leaving behind only empty cities and unanswered questions. No Primarch technology had shown active power signatures for eons. The deeper Jinho ventured into the temple, the more elaborate the artwork became. Here were depictions of the Primarchs themselves, tall, graceful beings with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that held the wisdom of ages. They had ruled the galaxy when Jinho's own species was still learning to make fire. They had mastered death, bending time and space to their will, creating wonders that younger civilizations could barely comprehend. His scanner's beeping grew more insistent as he approached the temple's heart. The energy signature was definitely getting stronger, pulsing like a heartbeat in the quantum spectrum. Jinho's secondary hearts, a gift of his Zephyrian biology, began beating faster in response to his growing excitement. The central chamber took his breath away. A massive dome stretched overhead, its surface covered in a map of the galaxy that moved and shifted like a living thing. Star systems pulsed with different colors, marking the rise and fall of civilizations across cosmic time. Trade routes appeared as golden threads connecting distant worlds, while red zones marked areas of conflict or danger. But it was the object at the chamber's center that made Jinho's hands tremble with anticipation. A crystalline obelisk hung, suspended in a column of pure energy, its surface covered in Primarch script that seemed to write and rewrite itself continuously. The stasis field that contained it hummed with power that defied his understanding of physics. "Nexus, are you recording this?" Jinho whispered into his comm. "Every photon and quantum fluctuation," his AI companion replied. "The power source appears to be drawing energy directly from the quantum foam. This technology is at least 1,000,000 years beyond current galactic standards." Jinho approached the obelisk slowly, his scanner going wild as it tried to analyze the impossible energy surrounding the artifact. The Primarch script was ancient even by their standards. This was Old Tongue, the ceremonial language they used only for their most important proclamations. As his gloved hand reached toward the crystalline surface, warnings flashed across his helmet display. The energy levels were dangerous, potentially lethal to most species, but Jinho had spent his entire career chasing dangerous discoveries. The greatest archaeological finds always came with risks. The moment his fingers made contact with the obelisk, the world exploded into light. Holographic text blazed to life around him, filling the chamber with words that burned themselves into his mind. The message was short but devastating in its implications. Never wake the sleepers of the third world. Never give them the stars. What we have seen in the probability streams cannot be allowed to pass. The young species of the water world must remain bound to their cradle, or all shall burn in the fires of their ambition. Coordinates followed, streaming directly into his suit's computer systems. Jinho's blood ran cold as he recognized the location, a small yellow star in the outer spiral arm. orbited by 9 worlds including one blue marble that teemed with life. Earth, the primitive world that the Galactic Council barely acknowledged, home to a species that had only recently learned to leave their planetary surface. Jinho had read the reports. Bipedal mammals who fought constant wars among themselves, who poisoned their own atmosphere, who seemed destined for self-destruction within a few centuries. Why would the Primarchs, masters of the galaxy for millions of years, fear such a young and chaotic species? The beings who had transcended death itself, who had witnessed the birth and death of countless civilizations, who had shaped the very structure of galactic society, what could possibly have terrified them about a world of primitive mammals? The hologram flickered and died, leaving Jinho alone in the suddenly silent chamber. His hands shook as he downloaded the coordinates and linguistic data to his suit's memory banks. Whatever the Primarchs had discovered about Earth, whatever they had seen in their probability streams, it had been significant enough to leave a warning that had survived 50 million years. As he made his way back through the crystal corridors toward his ship, Jinho couldn't shake the feeling that he had just stumbled upon the galaxy's most dangerous secret. The silence of the dead temple felt heavier now, weighted with implications he was only beginning to understand. The deep current drifted silently at the edge of the Sol system, hidden behind a large asteroid that provided perfect cover from eye. Any scanning attempts. Jinho had disabled all but the most essential systems, running on minimal power to avoid detection. What he was doing violated every protocol in the Galactic Council's handbook, but the Primarch warning had burned itself into his mind like a brand. "Nexus, are you sure we're invisible to their detection systems?" Jinho asked his AI companion while adjusting the long-range sensors. "Their technology is primitive by galactic standards," Nexus replied, its voice carrying a note of curiosity. "However, I'm detecting some unusual quantum signatures from their inner planets. They seem to be experimenting with technologies they shouldn't understand yet." Jinho's 4 eyes focused on the main display as Earth appeared in crystal-clear detail. The third planet from their sun was a beautiful blue marble covered in swirling white clouds. Oceans dominated the surface, with green and brown land masses scattered across the globe like jewels. It looked peaceful, almost innocent. But as Jinho began intercepting their transmissions, a different picture emerged. The first thing that struck him was the sheer volume of communication. Radio waves, television signals, digital data streams, humans were constantly talking to each other across their planet. They had built a global network that connected billions of individuals, sharing information at speeds that impressed even his advanced sensors. "Look at this, Nexus," Jinho said, pulling up a timeline of human history. "They've only existed for 300,000 years. In galactic terms, that's like they were born yesterday." The data streams painted a picture that made Jinho's secondary hearts race with disbelief. Humans had faced extinction event after extinction event, yet somehow they kept surviving. 74,000 years ago, a supervolcano had erupted with the force of 1,000 nuclear weapons, plunging their world into volcanic winter. The human population had dropped to fewer than 10,000 individuals. Any other species would have gone extinct. Humans had instead spread across the globe. Jinho watched in fascination as the historical records revealed ice ages that should have frozen them to death, asteroid impacts that should have ended their civilization, plagues that killed 9 out of every 10 people. Each time humanity teetered on the edge of oblivion. Each time they clawed their way back stronger than before. "This is biologically impossible," Jinho muttered, his blue skin paling as he studied the data. "No species survives this much trauma. No species develops this quickly." But the evidence was undeniable. Humans didn't just survive disasters. They seemed to thrive because of them. Their greatest technological leaps happened during their darkest hours. War drove them to split the atom. Competition pushed them to the stars. Fear of disease led them to decode their own genetic structure. Jinho pulled up footage from their recent conflicts, expecting to see the kind of ritualized combat that most species engaged in. Instead, he found something that chilled his alien: blood. Humans fought with a creativity and determination that bordered on madness. They turned farming tools into weapons, kitchen chemicals into explosives, children's toys into guidance systems for projectiles, during what they called world War 2. Humans had gone from simple propeller aircraft to jet engines in just 6 years. They had developed radar, computers, and nuclear weapons, while simultaneously fighting a global conflict that involved every continent on their planet. Most species took millennia to achieve such technological breakthroughs during peacetime. "Show me their space program," Jinho commanded, his voice tight with growing unease. The data that appeared made his hands tremble. Humans had gone from their first powered flight to walking on their moon in just 66 years. 66 years. The fastest species on record had taken 3,000 years to make the same journey. But it wasn't just the speed of their advancement. That terrified Jinho. It was the way they approached problems. When their early spacecraft kept exploding, they didn't give up or ask for help from other species. They built bigger rockets. When their astronauts died in accidents, they didn't cancel their programs. They learned from the deaths and kept pushing forward. Jinho watched video footage of human astronauts working in the vacuum of space, repairing their stations with tools that looked primitive, but somehow got the job done. They sang songs while they worked, joked with each other during dangerous procedures, and showed an almost casual attitude toward death that made Jinho's skin crawl. "Look at this transmission from their Mars colony," Nexus said, highlighting a recent communication. A human engineer named Kyung-hee was reporting on the colony's progress. She was standing in what looked like a greenhouse, surrounded by green, plants that should not have been able to grow in the harsh Martian environment. Behind her, Jinho could see the red landscape of Mars through reinforced windows. "We've had another dust storm," Kyung-hee was saying with a smile that seemed insane given the circumstances. "Lost 3 solar panels and our water recycler broke. Down again. But good news. We figured out how to grow tomatoes in Martian soil mixed with our compost. Dinner's going to be interesting tonight." She was treating a potentially lethal equipment failure like a minor inconvenience. The casual way she discussed surviving on a world that had killed countless robotic probes made Jinho's stomachs churn. But it was their weapons development that truly shocked him. Humans had created devices capable of destroying their entire planet multiple times over. They had biological weapons that could wipe out entire continents, chemical weapons that turned the air itself into poison, and nuclear arsenals that defied comprehension. Yet instead of using these weapons to destroy themselves, they had somehow stepped back from the brink. They had signed treaties, built international organizations, and begun working together on projects that spanned their entire species. "This is what the Primarchs saw," Jinho whispered to himself, staring at the data scrolling across his screens. "This is what terrified them. Humans weren't just another species that had achieved spaceflight. They were something new in the galaxy, a species that turned every limitation into motivation, every disaster into opportunity, every failure into fuel for greater success." The evidence was overwhelming and terrifying. Humanity wasn't evolving like other species. They were evolving at impossible speed, driven by forces that no other civilization had ever harnessed. As Jinho watched more transmissions pour in from Earth, showing humans building cities in deserts, farming in Arctic conditions, and planning missions to distant stars, he began to understand why the Primarchs had chosen extinction over coexistence. Humans weren't just survivors. They were the universe's answer to the question of what happened when evolution decided to create something unstoppable. The deep current cut through hyperspace like a knife through silk, but Jinho barely noticed the journey back to Kethmoran. His mind was consumed by what he had witnessed in the Sol system. The data files from Earth sat in his ship's memory banks like digital poison, each transmission more disturbing than the last. "For you seem troubled, Dr. Jinho," Nexus observed as they dropped out of hyperspace near the dead world. "Your biometric readings indicate severe stress." "I need to find the deeper archives," Jinho muttered, guiding his ship toward the crystalline temple that jutted from the planet's surface like a frozen scream. The Primarchs didn't just leave a warning, they left their reasons. The temple looked different now, somehow more ominous in the pale light of Kethmoran's dying sun. As Jinho descended through the crystal corridors, his scanner detected energy signatures he had missed before, hidden chambers, sealed vaults, quantum storage devices that had been invisible during his first visit. The central chamber's star map still pulsed with alien light. But now Jinho noticed something new. The map wasn't just showing the current galaxy. It was cycling through different time periods, showing the rise and fall of civilizations across millions of years. And in every projection, one small yellow star in the outer spiral arm remained consistently dim, unremarkable, until the final projections, where it blazed like a supernova. Jinho's hands shook as he approached a secondary control panel he had overlooked before. Ancient Primarch symbols glowed to life under his touch, and suddenly the chamber filled with new holograms. Archive files, genetic analysis reports, probability matrices that made his head spin with their complexity. A figure materialized in the center of the room, tall, elegant, with the characteristic obsidian skin and silver eyes of the Primarch. This was Minhyuk, the last of the probability seers, the beings who had guided Primarch civilization for eons by predicting the future through quantum mathematics. But the being in the hologram looked nothing like the serene, godlike Primarchs depicted in historical records. Minhyuk's features were twisted with an emotion Jinho had never seen on a Primarch face before. Pure, absolute terror. Council members, Minhyuk's recorded voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in the ancient ceremonial tongue that only scholars knew. We have completed our analysis of the bipedal species from the third world of System Sol 1. The results defy everything we thought we knew about evolution, probability, and the nature of life itself. The hologram shifted, showing vast computational arrays that filled entire worlds, quantum computers the size of moons, probability engines that could simulate the development of entire galaxies. The mathematical power that the Primarchs had brought to bear on the human question was staggering. We have run genetic and social projection models 10,000 times, Minhyuk continued, his voice growing tighter with each word. We have used every computational resource at our disposal. We have consulted the quantum oracles, the time weavers, even the forbidden chaos engines. The results are consistent across every simulation. New holograms appeared, showing DNA helixes that twisted and evolved at impossible speeds. Jinho watched human genetic code adapt and change in real time, responding to environmental pressures in ways that violated every law of biology he knew. The species that calls itself humanity represents an evolutionary impossibility, Minhyuk said. They should not exist. Their development pattern should not be possible. Yet they not only exist, they thrive in conditions that would destroy any other form of life. The projection showed a time lapse of human history, compressed into minutes. Jinho watched civilizations rise and fall, but each time humanity emerged stronger. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, plagues that killed billions. Every catastrophe that should have ended them instead became a stepping stone to greater achievement. Look at their response to extinction events. Minhyuk's voice grew quieter, more disturbed. When the Toba supervolcano reduced their population to fewer than 10,000 individuals, other species would have retreated to safe territories and slowly rebuilt. Humans instead spread across their entire planet. They colonized new continents, adapted to new climates, developed new technologies. The hologram showed human migrations, following genetic markers as they spread from Africa to every corner of their world. But it wasn't just migration. It was conquest, not through violence but through an irrepressible drive to explore, to adapt, to overcome. Their greatest weakness is their greatest strength, Minhyuk continued, his image flickering as if the recording itself was afraid. Short lifespans create urgency. Every human lives with the knowledge that their time is limited, so they push harder, dream bigger, accomplish more in decades than other species achieve in millennia. Jinho watched projections of human innovation cascading across the display, from stone tools to space stations in mere thousands of years, from cave paintings to quantum computers, in the blink of an evolutionary eye. Pain creates innovation. Minhyuk's voice was barely a whisper now. Every time humans encounter a problem, they don't just solve it. They obliterate it with solutions so elegant and efficient that they reshape their entire civilization. Disease leads to medicine. War leads to technology. Scarcity leads to abundance. The hologram showed human cities growing like living things, sprawling across continents, reaching toward the stars. Jinho could see the pattern now. Humanity didn't adapt to their environment. They transformed it to suit their needs. Isolation creates hunger for expansion, Min-hyuk continued. Trapped on their single world, humans have developed an insatiable appetite for exploration that will drive them to every corner of the galaxy. They do not accept limitations. They transcend them through will alone. The final projections made Jinho's blood run cold. They showed humanity's future spread across millions of years, expanding through the galaxy not as conquerors, but as gardeners. Dead worlds bloomed with life under human touch. Hostile environments became thriving colonies. Every barrier the universe placed before them became fuel for greater achievement. We who have lived for millions of years have forgotten the power of mortality. Min-hyuk's voice grew so quiet that Jinho had to strain to hear it. We have forgotten what it means to burn bright and brief. We have forgotten the strength that comes from knowing your time is limited. The humans remember. They have never forgotten. And that will be our undoing. The final image showed the Primarch homeworld as Jinho had never seen it, not in its prime, but in its final days. Empty cities, silent streets, vacant spires, reaching toward indifferent stars. The immortal beings who had ruled the galaxy for eons had simply disappeared. We cannot coexist with a species that makes impossibility routine, Min-hyuk's final words echoed through the chamber. We cannot compete with beings who turn every setback into victory, every limitation into liberation. They will not destroy us through malice. They will surpass us through excellence. The mathematics are clear. Humanity's rise is inevitable. Our choice is simple. Witness our obsolescence or choose the dignity of departure. The hologram faded, leaving Jinho alone. In the crystal chamber, with the weight of 50 million years of fear pressing down on him, the Primarchs hadn't been destroyed by humanity. They had been so terrified by humanity's potential that they had chosen extinction rather than face a universe where they were no longer the dominant force. As the silence stretched around him, Jinho finally understood why the galaxy's oldest species avoided Earth. They weren't protecting themselves from human aggression. They were protecting themselves from human excellence. Back aboard the deep current, Jinho's hands shook as he activated his ship's quantum intelligence networks. What he was about to do would trigger every security protocol in the Galactic Council's database, but he had to know. He had to see what humanity had accomplished since the Primarch warning was recorded. Nexus, access all available intelligence. Reports on human expansion, Jinho commanded, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. I want everything. Colony reports, technological assessments, cultural analysis files. Dr. Jinho, accessing those files without proper authorization could result in— Do it, Jinho snapped. Override all restrictions. Use my emergency research codes if necessary. The main display erupted with data streams showing human colonies scattered throughout their solar system like seeds thrown by a careless god. What Jinho saw made his secondary heart stop beating for several terrifying seconds. In just 200 years since achieving primitive spaceflight, humans had not only reached every major body in their solar system, they had made homes there. Real colonies with families, children playing in environments that should have killed them within minutes. Venus appeared first on his screen, wrapped in its hellish atmosphere of sulfuric acid clouds and crushing pressure. The planet's surface temperature could melt lead, and its atmospheric pressure was 90 times greater than Earth's. It was a world where even the hardiest robotic probes barely survived for hours. Yet there, floating 50 kilometers above the surface, was New Sol, a human city suspended in the upper atmosphere like a jewel in a storm. Jinho watched in disbelief as the colony's biodomes rotated slowly, creating artificial gravity, while massive atmospheric processes filtered breathable air from the toxic clouds below. How are they surviving there? Jinho whispered, zooming in on the colony's structure. The acid content alone should dissolve their materials. The answer came in the form of intercepted transmissions. Human engineers had developed new alloys that not only resisted the corrosive atmosphere, but actually fed on it. growing stronger with exposure. They were using Venus's hostility as a resource, harvesting energy from the planet's hellish conditions to power their floating cities. Mars was even more impressive. The red planet that had claimed dozens of robotic missions from other species now hosted 3 major human settlements. New Incheon sprawled across the Martian plains like a growing organism, its domed structures connected by pressurized tunnels that snaked across the landscape for hundreds of kilometers. Jinho switched to another feed, showing the Jupiter colony ship New Incheon as it approached Europa's ice-covered surface. The massive vessel carried 10,000 colonists, including entire families, with children who laughed and played in artificial gravity chambers while hurtling through space at speeds that would have been unthinkable just decades earlier. On the bridge of the colony ship, Minji Ko was reviewing landing protocols with her engineering team. She was barely 30 years old, a child by galactic standards, yet she had designed self-repairing habitat systems that adapted to environmental changes in real time. The technology she had created in months would have taken other species millennia to develop. The ice thickness varies between 50 and 200 meters, Minji was explaining to her team, pointing at holographic displays that showed Europa's subsurface ocean. We'll need to adjust the thermal penetrators for each landing site, but the automated systems should handle most of the variables. She was talking about boring through the ice crust of an alien moon like it was a routine construction project. The casual confidence in her voice, the way she treated impossible challenges as minor engineering problems. It was the same attitude Jinho had observed in every human transmission he had intercepted. That hunger in their eyes. That absolute refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. It was what had driven them from caves to space colonies in the blink of an evolutionary eye, and it was what terrified every ancient species in the galaxy. Jinho's finger hovered over the transmission key that would send his complete findings to the Galactic Council. The evidence was overwhelming. Humanity was not just another spacefaring species. They were something new, something unprecedented, something that could reshape the galaxy in ways that made even the Primarchs choose extinction over coexistence. The Council would mobilize immediately. Quarantine fleets would surround the Sol system within days. Humanity's expansion would be halted before they could spread their impossible excellence to other star systems. The galaxy's careful balance of power would be preserved. But as Jinho watched more transmissions from human colonies, children playing in radiation-shielded playgrounds on Mars, scientists solving quantum mechanics problems while cooking dinner, on Titan, engineers building cities in environments that should have killed them, he realized something that made his blood run cold. It was already too late. Humanity's rate of advancement wasn't slowing down. If anything, it was accelerating. Every challenge they faced became fuel for greater achievement. Every limitation placed before them became inspiration for innovation. Quarantine wouldn't stop them. It would only make them more determined to break free. Jinho thought of the Primarchs, who had possessed technology that could manipulate time and space, who had ruled the galaxy for millions of years, who had achieved virtual immortality. They had looked at humanity's potential and chosen to disappear rather than witness their own obsolescence. The greatest civilizations in galactic history had been so terrified of human potential that they had abandoned the universe rather than compete with them. With shaking hands, Jinho deleted his research files, all of them. The Primarch records, the colony surveillance data, the technological assessments, everything that could reveal the truth about humanity's impossible nature vanished into quantum foam. Instead, he composed a single brief message to the Galactic Council. Survey of Sol system completed. Recommend maintaining current protocols. Species shows standard development patterns. Direct contact inadvisable due to primitive social structures. Continue benign neglect policies. The barriers must hold. It was a lie that would preserve 50 million years of carefully maintained secrecy. A lie that would keep the galaxy's greatest secret hidden for perhaps a few more centuries. Jinho activated his ship's quantum engines and set course for home, leaving the Sol system behind. As the stars stretched into hyperspace tunnel walls, he took one last look at the small blue dot that held 8 billion sleeping giants. Earth continued its quiet orbit around an unremarkable yellow star, unaware that the galaxy's greatest civilizations were working desperately to keep humanity from reaching their true destiny among the stars. The humans went about their daily lives, raising families, building impossible cities, and dreaming of distant worlds, completely oblivious to the fear they inspired in species that had ruled the galaxy for eons. But Jinho knew what the Primarchs had known 50 million years ago. No cage could hold a species that turned every limitation into a ladder to climb higher. No barrier could contain beings who treated the impossible as merely inconvenient. The quarantine barriers around Sol system would hold for now. The galactic civilizations would maintain their policy of benign neglect, keeping humanity isolated in their single star system through careful manipulation of space lanes and communication networks. But not forever. Nothing could hold back a species that had learned to thrive on adversity, to grow stronger through suffering, to transform every obstacle into opportunity. Humanity would reach the stars eventually. When they did, the galaxy would never be the same. As the deep current disappeared into hyperspace, carrying its captain and his terrible secret back to the Zephyrian homeworld, Earth spun peacefully in the cosmic dark. 8 billion humans continued their daily struggles, completely unaware that they were the most feared species in galactic history, and somewhere in the depths of space, ancient monitoring stations continued their eternal vigil, watching and waiting for the day when humanity would finally break free from their carefully constructed cage and claim their destiny among the stars. That day was coming. It was inevitable, and when it arrived, the galaxy would learn what the Primarchs had discovered 50 million years ago, that some species are not meant to be contained. The end.